Greetings America. Today on Censor Wars. Assange expected to confirm source of DNC emails was Seth Rich and not Russians. The April 11 arrest of Julian Assange has resurrected the narrative that emails stored on the Democratic National Committee were not hacked by Russia, but leaked by a disenchanted employee, Seth Rich, who wanted to expose how Bernie Sanders was systematically undermined during the 2016 primaries by the DNC. According to this narrative, Rich communicated with Assange and handed over the DNC emails through a secure online drop box. Rich's role in leaking the DNC emails subsequently languished, but gained renewed life a year later on October 4, 2018, when the NSA responded to a Freedom of Information request that showed Rich had indeed been communicating with Assange. Many high-level intelligence officials have hinted at a secret cooperation between Julian Assange and President Trump. This fits the narrative from the leaked tape of Seymour Hersh speaking about a classified FBI report that stated Rich asked Assange for money in exchange for DNC emails. Let's listen to what former technical director for the NSA, William Binney, has to say on this issue.
So we know that in the Mueller report there is a lie. There is an absolute lie. That
there's a number of lies.
Okay.
And a number of disinformation. For example, the idea that the impression they're giving is that this is government information like from NSA. Here's how they got in. And that data is not from NSA because if it's NSA data, it's classified and they have to redact it. Otherwise, they're in violation of espionage laws and laws governing classification and protection of classified material. So and the only one who can classify it.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're getting it from a third party like CrowdStrike. So, I mean, you know, this is tainted material that can't be introduced in a court of law because they had no continuous control of the evidence. I mean, they never got the server, first of all, and they were only given data by these people who were running that server. And so therefore they have no continuous control of the data. How can you enter that in a court of law and say it isn't tainted?
I'm just trying to make sure that I understand this. So the information that is in this Mueller report, because he did do an indictment of these people, there's nothing to back it up. It's just out of nowhere, the Mueller team decided to indict 15 Russians and claim something, but they have nothing to support their claims.
And they also base it, they used Guccifer 2 as a basis for that. And we can prove that Guccifer 2 is a fraud and a fabrication. Most of the timestamping we found internally in the data that was being used by or posted by Guccifer 2 shows that it's originating somewhere in the United States on the East Coast Central Time and one case on the West Coast. So, you know, that's a total fabrication, and he's basing that in DC leaks on that in that indictment as the fundamental evidence they're using. That's crazy.
How sloppy. And before we began this phone call, you mentioned something about a lawyer who did a FOIA request. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, Ty Clemens or Clevenger.
I think you said Ty Clevenger.
Yeah, Ty Clevenger. He FOIA'd information from NSA asking for any data that involved both Seth Rich and also Julian Assange. And they responded by saying, we've got 15 files, 32 pages, but they're all classified in accordance with the Executive Order 13526, governing classification, and therefore you can't have them. But that says that NSA has records of communications between Seth Rich and Julian Assange. I mean, that's the only business that NSA is in, copying communication between people and devices.
So any communication that happens, they're collecting. They collected this and they said it's top secret or secret, and therefore it is classified.
Yep.
Will Assange be offered a plea deal for revealing source of DNC emails? The timing of this sudden movement in the Assange case after several years of almost complete stasis is not a coincidence. As Brian wrote in a recent column, now you will see Trump fully unleashed. Brian expects that Trump will begin making moves he has been delaying while waiting for the right time. The Department of Justice's indictment of Assange was filed and sealed on March 6th back in 2018, which was more than a year ago. Interestingly enough, the Trump DOJ made this decision to likely make a deal with Ecuador and unseal Assange's indictment. Shortly after the Mueller Special Counsel released its final report, immediately after Attorney General William Barr testified to the US Congress that he believes the Trump presidential campaign was spied on by US intelligence and law enforcement agencies during the 2016 election. All the federal law enforcement and intelligence agency officials who spied on Trump's campaign knew there was never any evidence of collusion between the Russian government and Trump's campaign, whether it was collusion on stolen DNC emails or anything else. Mueller has confirmed this by ending his probe without charging a single person with any such activity. The publicly known evidence at this stage points to the fact that the people who launched the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane counterintelligence investigation knew all along they were engaged in a massive fraud. Now, Brian believes all of this is going to be demonstrated to the public as evidence is rolled out in a way that the Democrats and the DNC media can't stop, deny, or spin. What's the biggest foundational belief of the entire Trump-Russia election collusion hoax? What idea do those who are still pushing that hoax see as foundational to their position? It's that Russian hackers stole DNC emails and that the Russian government made overtures to the Trump presidential campaign about these emails before they were published by Wikileaks. Those who still buy into this hoax firmly believe that Putin's government and Trump's campaign coordinated together in the theft and then in the publication of these DNC emails. Stop for a moment and think about what it would do to the strongly held delusion that Trump and Putin worked together on this email theft if it was suddenly proven through documentary evidence and testimony by the person who published the stolen emails that no Russians whatsoever were involved in getting the emails to WikiLeaks. That instead of Russian hackers, Russian agents, or Trump associates, the emails were obtained in a different way, such as through a leak from within the DNC itself. If this were proven, the entire collusion hoax that gripped the country for more than 2 years would collapse at last, like the rickety house of cards it has always been. So is Assange the key. Even the most desperate hand-waving narrative magicians in our Congress and in our news media would be quite hard-pressed to maintain the illusion for their increasingly skeptical audience if this were to happen. Well, gird your loins, because Brian believes this is what is about to happen, and Assange is the key. As the publisher of the DNC emails, nobody knows better than he does the true source of those emails. There is already fun media commentary that it's going to take years to extradite Assange to the United States, as if it wasn't already set up among the various parties involved before the events of April 11th. Trump and Pompeo have massive leverage over the UK government for reasons that are going to continue to become clear over the next several months. Once Assange has been remanded to the custody of William Barr's Justice Department, Brian believes he will be offered a plea deal of a most lenient sentence in exchange for his testimony and documentary evidence regarding the actual source of the DNC emails. And if Assange is smart, he will take it.
And the FBI in this case, unlike other cases that you might investigate, did you ever have access to the actual hardware that was hacked, or did you have to rely on a third party to provide you the data that they had collected?
In the case of the DNC, and I believe the DCCC, but I'm sure the DNC, we did not have access to the devices themselves. We got relevant forensic information from a private party, a high-class entity that had done the work, but we didn't get direct access.
But no content?
Correct.
Isn't content an important part of the forensics from a counterintelligence standpoint?
It is.
CrowdStrike revises and retracts part of the explosive Russian hacking report. This via Liberty Blitzkrieg, where last week Michael Krieger, who runs Liberty Blitzkrieg, published 2 posts on the cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike after becoming aware of inaccuracies on one of its key reports used to bolster the claim that operatives of the Russian government had hacked into the DNC. This is, of course, important since the DNC hired CrowdStrike to look into its hack and at the same time denied the FBI access to its server. So the latest developments from Voice of America, U.S. cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike has revised and retracted statements it used to buttress claims of Russian hacking during last year's American presidential election campaign. CrowdStrike was first to link hacks of Democratic Party computers to Russian actors last year, but some cybersecurity experts have questioned its evidence. So in an email to VOA News, CrowdStrike noted that the FBI and the U.S. intelligence community concluded that Russia was behind the hacks of the DNC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, and, of course, the email account of John Podesta. Yes, the FBI agreed with CrowdStrike's conclusion, but the FBI didn't analyze the DNC servers because the DNC specifically denied the FBI access. Liberty Blitzkrieg wraps up by noting this is noteworthy in its own right, but takes on vastly increased significance given the serious errors in a related hacking report produced by the company. That report, now the company itself, CrowdStrike, kind of quietly backing away from. James?
It's an absolutely incredible thing to watch this narrative unraveling, but unraveling on the, in the back page of the second section of the newspaper, as it were, rather than A1. The headlines make A1. The retraction makes somewhere near the back, the third section of the paper, as always. So yes, just for anyone paying attention at home, or at least trying to pay attention, the fundamental central claims of that the DNC was hacked by Russia were based on this analysis by CrowdStrike, not by the FBI. The FBI did not get access to the DNC servers. They didn't let the FBI analyze the servers. They let CrowdStrike, this independent organization, come in and analyze the servers, and they gave that analysis over to the FBI. CrowdStrike is now having to retract their claims of Russian hacking in Ukraine because, people started challenging them and they realized, okay, we can't put up that charade any longer. But hey, so what does that say about that DNC analysis? And just to make it even more explicit, Michael Krieger had another article from last week that I'll link people to. What is CrowdStrike? In which he has this little passage. The firm's CTO and co-founder, Dmitry Alperovich, is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, a think tank with openly anti-Russian sentiments that is funded by Ukraine billionaire Viktor Pinchuk, who also happened to donate at least $10 million to the Clinton Foundation. Surprise, surprise, guys, it's all an inside operation to come to the conclusion that it was the Russians. This is where the whole Russian hacking meme nonsense is coming from, and it is being exposed as garbage. But again, the retraction is never the headline. Mueller indicts 13 Russian nationals over 2016 election interference. And there are some definite problems with that narrative that they're presenting even in that headline. Like, for example, one of the memes that they use to sway the election: Satan, if I win, Clinton wins. Jesus, not if I can help it. Press like to help Jesus win. You cannot make this stuff up. If I was trying to write a stupider idea about the election, and if I was writing some sci-fi fantasy several years ago about the 2016 elections and how stupid it would all become, I couldn't have made up anything as ridiculous as this. That this is why Trump got elected. This is why I didn't vote for Hillary, because I saw this meme. It's so unbelievably stupid, and no one is taking it seriously, and there are so many holes that you can pick apart in this, including the fact that, by the way, most of these Russian ad buys occurred after the election. But, don't let a timeline get in the way of a good story. Or, how about this one? Hillary Clinton outspent Russians 53-1 and lost. As always, let's look at the actual sources of information that are coming out here, as opposed to the interpretations of those sources of information, because there has been some releases that have been largely hyped in the fake news over the past several days, including the December 29th joint analysis report from the FBI and the DHS, which seemed, again, like another authoritative nail in the coffin of this whole election scam. Clearly, it was the Russians hacking, because look at this joint analysis report, which is talking about Grizzly Step, Russian malicious cyber activity. And again, it looks authoritative. It looks very impressive if all you do is glance at it briefly or read a headline about it. But if you actually look at the report itself, well, it starts with a standard boilerplate disclaimer, or so they say for these joint analysis reports. This report is provided as is for informational purposes only. The DHS does not provide any warranties of any kind regarding any information contained within. Well, I'll take that to the bank. So anyway, taking that into account, let's look at what is actually presented here. If you go and look at the nuts and bolts of this report, essentially what we have is a very impressive looking graphic that purports to show what actually happened when they're talking about quote unquote hacking the election, What do they actually mean? Well, there's a few different things going on here, and essentially, you have some sort of malicious computer server somewhere sending out an email with a malicious link going to a recipient who then clicks on that link and gets a website that looks legitimate, and he enters his credentials in there, which then go back to that server, which then uses those credentials to access targeted systems and use malicious files and move through and gather information and exfiltrate that data back to the original server. This is spear phishing, and this is essentially, as far as anything that we can tell about what happened to John Podesta, this is what happened to Podesta. This is how we got the Podesta emails, and this is verified and corroborated by testimony from others, including server administrators that Podesta had corresponded to, who accidentally told him, yes, this looks legitimate. He meant to say illegitimate. That's the official story anyway, and they're sticking to it. And so he entered his credentials in, and well, we know that his emails got exfiltrated back to this server. But the whole link here, the important part of this is this part. Adversary space, Russian intelligence services, grisly step, leverages this operational infrastructure. Now, all of this, again, can be corroborated. We know that something like this clearly did happen. We have nothing, absolutely nothing that we can go on to get this part. All we are getting is this nice graphic that shows it's these damn Russians in their hoodies sitting there on their laptops that are doing all of this behind the scenes. But this number one is kind of the most important part in all of this. And again, there is absolutely no data provided here. We do have a list of different names, alternate names for these Russian military and civilian intelligence services that apparently these teams go by. But again, this is literally just a list of code names that could have been made up by anyone at any time. Who knows what's behind them? They do show a little bit of the code that is apparently part of the Yara signature involved with these indicators of compromise accompanying the CSV and STIX files of JAR 16209296. But again, this PHP code itself doesn't tell us anything in particular about who did this. And as always with these types of things, even if there are indicators of things that we have in the past attributed to Russian intelligence, well, of course, if you're going to try to fake something to make it look like Russian intelligence, you would just insert the same or similar code or use similar types of programs. So again, this attribution all relies on essentially this image that just asks you to believe this is Russians in hoodies sitting on laptops. And then the rest of the report itself is just about what to do to try to mitigate this and don't let your servers get compromised. So again, absolutely not a shred of anything resembling evidence in this report if you actually read it. But of course, they're expecting you not to actually read it.
If ever you had any doubt as to how corrupt and how rancid the mainstream media are, look no further than this. Here we have it right now from Seymour Hersh. The mainstream media, the alt-left, anti-Trump sock puppet Ted Baxter media will completely ignore this incredible bombshell from Cy Hersh that Seth Rich was indeed the the DNC source. That's it. Goodbye, Russian story. Goodbye. John Brennan made the whole thing up. Russian hacking, Russian everything, gone. That's it. That's it.
We've got a bit of a legend with us, Seymour Hersh. We've interviewed him in the past, but it was a long time ago, back when we were mainly on radio. He's only won 2 National Magazine Awards, 5-time Polk winner. He was a dark horse candidate there, but won it 5 times anyway. 2004 George Orwell Award, and a little thing called a Pulitzer. Uncovered the My Lai Massacre and Abu Ghraib. I'd say not a big deal, but it is a big deal.
Seymour Hersh, who a lot of you unfortunately have probably never heard of, was on audio, and WikiLeaks tweeted this out, which means they are now confirming Seth Rich indeed was the DNC leaker. Seth Rich leaked the DNC documents to WikiLeaks. That has been confirmed. Seymour Hersh is a Pulitzer Prize winner who exposed the abuse at Abu Ghraib and the My Lai massacre. This is not somebody to be taken lightly. If Seymour Hersh is claiming something, he's one of the old guard investigative journalists that's still interested in investigative journalism.
I'll tell you what I know. What I know comes off an FBI report. Don't ask me how you can figure out. I've been around long enough. And the same more. They call in the Fed. The Feds get through. And here's what they find. This is according to the FBI report. What they find is He makes first of all, you have to know some basic facts. One of the basic facts is there's no DNC or Podesta email that exists beyond May 22nd, May 21st, 22nd. It's the last email for either one of those groups. And so what the report says that sometime in late spring, we're talking about June, summer's in June 21st. Late spring would be after, I presume, I don't know, I just say it says late spring, early summer. He makes contact with WikiLeaks. That's in his computer, and he makes contact. Now, I have to be careful because I met Julian and Julian 10, 12 years. I say the fuck away from people like that. And he invited me, and when I'm in London, I always get a message, come see me as the Ecuadorian ambassador, and there's no fucking way I'm going there. I've got enough trouble without getting photographed by every fucking age. He's under total surveillance by everybody. But anyway, they found what he had done. He had submitted a series of documents, of emails, some juicy emails from the DNC. And, by the way, all this shit about the DNC, whether hacked or wasn't hacked, but whatever happened, the Democrats themselves wrote this shit. You know what I mean? All I know is that he offered a sample, an extensive sample, I'm sure dozens of emails, and said, I want money. That later, WikiLeaks did get the password. He had a Dropbox, a protected Dropbox, which isn't hard to do. I mean, you don't have to be a wizard, IT wizard. He was certainly, he's not a dumb kid. They got access to the Dropbox. He also, and this is also in the FBI report, he also let people know with whom he was dealing. And I don't know how he dealt. I'll tell you about WikiLeaks in a second. I don't know how he dealt with the WikiLeaks and the mechanism. But he also, the word was passed, according to the FBI report. I also shared this box with a couple of friends. So if anything happens to me, it's not going to solve your problem. Okay? I don't know what that means. I don't know whether he was, anyway. But WikiLeaks got access, and before he was killed, I can tell you right now, Brennan's an asshole. I've known all these people for years. Clapper's sort of a better guy, but now rocket scientist. The NSA guy's a fucking moron. And the trouble with all those guys is that the only way they're going to make it to a board or two and get hired by SAIC to deliver some fat cat contracts is if Hillary stayed in. With Trump, they're gone. They're done. They're going to live on their pension. They're not going to make it. And I got to tell you, guys in that job, they don't want to live on their pension. They want to be on boards like they're make $600,000 for going to 4 visits. I have somebody on the inside. I've been around a long time and I write a lot of stuff. I have somebody on the inside who will go and read a file for me. This person is unbelievably accurate and careful. He's a very high-level guy. He'll do a favor.
Daily Caller. It's a footnote in the Washington Post. The top investigator into the Seth Rich murder was shot twice in the back. He got away with his dachshund badger hound in his arms, and then the person began trying to run him over, a Marine with the Department of Energy. Yeah, when the hitman comes, that's what they are. He thought he was at a document pickup. And when he went under the orange cone to get the documents, he got shot twice in the back. He ran with his dog in his arms, and the feller coming after him, who's been arrested, didn't stop, started running over him, but he jumped between cars after being rammed twice and lived. Tough cookie. The Daily Caller. It's also posted on InfoWars. Former Marine charged in shooting, hit and run of controversial Seth Rich investigator. I love how if you investigate, you're controversial. I guess the Daily Caller wants to say that so they don't get sued. Now investigating, see, is controversial. Yeah, it's controversial. He got shot twice in the back and survived by a Marine with the Department of Energy. Sure. I told everybody when the hitmen come, they're sheep-dipped veterans inside government agencies. That's the hitmen in this country. It's no big deal. He just shot him twice in the back and tried to run over him twice. No big deal. Move along. Everything's fine. Nothing's going on with Seth Rich's death either. He only got shot a couple times in the back, too. Don't question it.
Let me just make one clear point. You don't know that Vladimir Putin was behind those hacks.
Well, we do know this, and I
but
can
you
say
don't
this,
know that, so let's not pretend that you do.
Well, let's not ignore what the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Director of National Intelligence said publicly, which is that these hacks were of such seriousness they could not have taken place without the approval at the highest levels of the Kremlin.
That's speculation, and we've seen well, it is speculation. That's
it is not speculation. You can only say speculation.
Statement of fact?
It is a statement of the intelligence community's best assessment,
okay.
and
but
you can quarrel with that because there's a political reason to do it, but this is what the intelligence professionals are saying.
Well, they've told us a lot. You know,
seriously.
I've lived here a long time. I remember vividly the massive stockpiles of WMD in Iraq, which the intelligence community assured us were there, and they weren't. So, pardon me for my skepticism. I think it's a patriotic position. Look into the camera and say they hacked John Podesta's emails. We know for a fact that Putin's government did that. You can't, and you know you can't, and you're hiding behind weasel words.
I just said that the
say they hacked John Podesta's emails.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as to
because you don't know it. That's why. All right, done. One. You don't know it, and you're alleging it without any evidence, and it's wrong.
You're ignoring the evidence because you don't care. The fact that it helped the Republican candidate is all you need to know, apparently.
That's totally false. I just think if you're going to make a serious allegation about an actual country with an actual government, you ought to know what you're talking about, and you don't.
I think that you ought to accept.
I got to go. I'm taking cash from Putin now. I'm on RT.
Republicans on the Intelligence Committee have seen for a fact.
If you could say it, you would, and you can't. And you know that.
If you're willing to be in denial about this because it suits a Republican-elect president.
Okay, whatever. You can blather on all you want, man, but I gave you a chance to state it clearly, and you wouldn't, which tells you everything you know.
You
all right.
Or a president-elect. Okay. Not very much, apparently.
I appreciate that, Congressman. And now I need to take a call from Vladimir Putin, so I'm going to put you on hold for 1 second.